An unspeakable discovery in this derelict house behind me sent shockwaves through the entire community. Her body was exposed, unclothed from the waist down when they brought her out. The agony she must have endured is unimaginable. It would have been excruciating. We can finally breathe. It feels like justice is within reach for our daughter's killer. We owe everything to the tireless work of law enforcement. It's 2:05 in the morning at an Oakland bus stop. A lone young woman waits. Moments later, a crimson Toyota 4Runner cruises by. The vehicle passes once, then circles back again, a predator stalking its prey. It executes a sharp U-turn and stops directly beside her. She enters the vehicle. By 6:40 a.m., her lifeless form is discovered on the 1900 block of 3rd Avenue, just a stone's throw from the FM Recreation Center. The scene was brutal. Her face was shattered from severe head trauma, causing a brain hemorrhage. Her arms bore the marks of a desperate struggle for her life. She'd been robbed, her jewelry and phone vanished. The coroner's report confirmed the horrific truth. She had been sexually violated. The victim was 23-year-old Kimberly Robertson. She was a mother to a 2-year-old daughter and a dedicated student of criminal justice. On the evening of April 4th, 2014, she walked out of her home and was never seen alive again. The final person known to be with her was her boyfriend. Their location was the Lakeside Lounge. Security footage placed them at the bar at 11:30 p.m. The two exchanged few words. At 1:15 in the morning, they exited the lounge and proceeded to a nearby Walgreens parking lot. Video surveillance captured a taxi arriving. She climbed in, only to emerge just 30 seconds later. The cab then departed, leaving her behind. Her boyfriend came back, parking his car close to the bus stop. Footage confirms his vehicle remained stationary there until 6:18 that morning. He never exited the car. His alibi was solid. He wasn't the killer. This forced investigators to pivot, turning their attention to a different vehicle, a red Toyota 4Runner. A bank security camera recorded the SUV ominously circling the bus stop multiple times before finally pulling to the curb. An individual climbs into the passenger seat, and the vehicle speeds away. Roughly 60 minutes later, that same SUV is spotted near the FM Recreation Center, ominously close to where her body was ultimately found. Detectives combing the crime scene discovered a Lowe's receipt dated March 23rd. The store was located only 100 meters from the body's location. Miraculously, the surveillance tape from that date was still preserved. The footage showed the red Toyota 4Runner entering the parking lot and two men proceeding into the store. Payment was made with a bank card, but there was a crucial twist. The card was stolen. 3 hours after the purchase, it was used again at a fast food joint. This second transaction provided investigators with exactly what they needed: a crystal clear shot of the vehicle's license plate. The SUV was registered to a 41-year-old immigrant from Ghana named Prince Chetch, known to his friends as Frank. He was a family man, married with 3 kids, residing in Oakland, and making a living selling apparel at local farmers markets. In his initial police interview, he flatly denied ever seeing Kimberly, claiming he didn't know her at all. But detectives already had proof she'd been in his SUV. His narrative crumbled. He eventually confessed to giving her a lift that night. He alleged the sexual contact was a paid, consensual act, insisting he left her unharmed. Yet, his DNA was an undeniable match to the evidence collected from Kimberly's body. The prosecution methodically constructed their argument. He was seen circling the bus stop just before she vanished into thin air. He was the final person to see her alive. He confessed to the sexual encounter only after first lying about it. His vehicle was filmed near the very spot her body was discarded. His genetic material was on her body. Deliberation was swift. The jury returned in under 2 hours. The verdict: guilty. First-degree murder. With the special circumstance of a murder perpetrated during the commission of a rape, the sentence: life behind bars, with no chance of parole. Yet, even then, he maintained his innocence. "I didn't kill her," he claimed. But the mountain of evidence, the video, the timeline, his route, his deception, and the DNA painted a single, damning portrait of that fateful night. Every piece of the puzzle locked into place. To grasp the full tragedy, we must journey back to the start, in Oakland, California. It was there that 23-year-old Kimberly Robertson was forging a new life. She hailed from Texas, having grown up in Dallas. Following her graduation from Kimball High School, she earned a degree from ITT Technical Institute in December of 2013. Soon after, she relocated to Oakland, her 2-year-old daughter in tow, fiercely determined to make a fresh start. Kimberly was pursuing further education at Hilded College in San Francisco, where she was enrolled in their criminal justice program. She was a woman of confidence and warmth, but her absolute devotion was to her little girl. Her daughter was the center of her universe. Kimberly's path, however, was paved with hardship. At the tender age of 2, her own mother was shot and killed by a boyfriend. A trauma that profound leaves a permanent scar. Decades later, Kimberly arrived in Oakland with a singular driving purpose: to provide her daughter with the best life imaginable. And Oakland. It's a city that makes an immediate impression. It isn't polished or pretentious. It's authentic. The crisp Bay Air collides with the golden California sun. And in the early hours, a tranquility settles over the city. You see people jogging the perimeter of Lake Merritt or lingering over coffee at outdoor cafes. Strangers exchange greetings without a sense of urgency. But by noon, the city's true character begins to emerge. Brick walls explode with color. Music bleeds from every open door, and a tapestry of different languages fills the air. Oakland's multicultural soul isn't just an idea. You can taste it in the food, feel it in the city's pulse, and see it in the defiant style of its people. But when night falls, the city's mood shifts. Along the waterfront, yachts rock in the gentle tide. The sun dissolves behind the hills. A soft murmur of conversation and laughter hangs in the air. From the Oakland hills, the bay lights glitter serene, nostalgic, purely California. This is a city that doesn't demand anything from you. It just lets you become part of its rhythm. So let me ask, what city are you in right now, and what time is it on your clock? I'm genuinely curious where this story is reaching you. Drop it in the comments, and as you do, the story continues. Friday, April 4th, 2014. That day, Kimberly spent time at the salon. She had her hair and nails done. She went to her sister Marquita's house to get ready for a night out with her boyfriend. While Marquita watched her own little girl, Kimberly was glowing. She was thrilled about the night ahead, filled with an electric sense of anticipation. She stepped out into the evening, completely unaware it would be her last. Not far from the F.M. Smith Recreation Center, a cyclist on a morning ride made the horrifying discovery. Sirens tore through the quiet as Oakland police, firefighters, and paramedics descended on the scene. They fought desperately to bring her back, but it was futile. She was pronounced dead where she lay. A sweater was found nearby. It was carefully sealed in an evidence bag. Investigators also recovered a receipt for gardening supplies. It didn't take long for official records to give the victim a name: 23-year-old Kimberly Robertson. Her face had been savaged. The dark bruises on her hands and forearms told a story of a desperate fight for her life. Her jewelry was gone. Her phone was missing. When Kimberly didn't come home, her sister just figured she was safe at her boyfriend's place. But that comforting thought was about to shatter her world. Then came the knock at the door. Detectives. A body had been found. It was Kimberly. In an instant, her sister's world collapsed. She couldn't fathom who would want to hurt Kimberly, let alone destroy her. But through the shock, she was certain of one thing. Her boyfriend Danny could never have done this. Danny was immediately brought in for interrogation. He was calm, telling officers that while their relationship was new, their friendship was months old. He walked them through the previous night, which started with drinks at the Lakeside Lounge at 338 East 18th Street. He claimed that after drinking, he insisted they were both too drunk to drive. But Kimberly, he said, argued with him. The disagreement exploded into a fight. He called a taxi, but Kimberly stormed off, vowing to get home herself. Danny said he couldn't just leave her there alone. He waved the taxi off and got into his own car. He drove a short way down the road and parked across from the bus stop where she stood. He told detectives he planned to wait, but he fell asleep. When he woke up, she had vanished. While investigators raced to verify his story, the preliminary autopsy report came in. The findings were horrific. Kimberly had died from severe trauma to her head, causing a massive brain hemorrhage. She had also been sexually assaulted. On Kimberly's Facebook page, a tidal wave of grief began to crash. Friends were in utter shock over her murder. One person posted, "It's hard to smile, knowing you're not here anymore. But there's still a smile in my heart, because I know you're in a better place now than in this cold world." While the investigation into Kimberly Robertson's murder gained momentum, police knew they needed witnesses from the Lakeside Lounge. Detectives went there, hoping to piece together the final hours. And there, they found something that could speak for itself: security cameras. An outside camera documented the couple arriving at the lounge at 11:30 p.m. They exchanged no words. They didn't even look at each other. A cold, silent space hung between them. Something was already deeply wrong, and their night had barely started. Later footage shows Danny talking with two other women while Kimberly sat by herself, staring down at her phone. The tension was a visible thing. You could feel the hostility without hearing a single word. Other recordings tracked their movements through the club, always with a calculated distance between them. At 1:15 in the morning, cameras captured them leaving the club. But they were not alone. A third man was with them. Kimberly's sister reviewed the footage and immediately recognized one of Danny's friends. Police pulled him in for questioning right away. He confirmed everything. At 1:24 in the morning, he told them he drove the couple to the lot where their car was parked. When officers arrived at that very parking lot, they stumbled upon an incredible stroke of luck. It sat directly beside a Walgreens, and Walgreens had its own surveillance cameras. The footage started at exactly 1:24 a.m. For more than 20 minutes, the scene is dead. No trace of Danny or Kimberly. Then, at 1:50 in the morning, a taxi's headlights slice through the dark. Danny is the first one visible, getting into the back of the car. Mere seconds pass before Kimberly appears, sliding into the front passenger seat. Almost 30 seconds tick by. The vehicle sits completely still, its engine idling. Abruptly, Kimberly exits the car and walks away. The cab drives off, with Danny still seated inside. A different camera angle captures the moment Kimberly leaves the taxi, turning back toward the direction of the parking lot. So she didn't take the cab after all. Instead, she pivots and heads straight back to where she came from. Approximately a minute later, the same taxi re-enters the camera's view. The exact reason is unclear, but investigators theorize Danny might have been circling the area, desperately searching for her. The cab vanishes from sight once more, only to return about 2 minutes later. This time, Danny emerges from the car. The taxi drives away, but Kimberly is nowhere to be found. Shortly after 2 in the morning, the cameras record a black SUV exiting the parking lot. It's Danny. His account of the night is holding up. Officers dispatched to the bus stop where Danny claimed Kimberly was waiting just before he drifted off. That location needed to be confirmed. If his story was legitimate, the surveillance footage would prove it. Fortuitously, that exact spot was also monitored by cameras, providing coverage of both the street and the bus stop. Detectives meticulously combed through the footage, frame by frame. They witnessed his SUV pull up and park directly opposite the bus stop, just as he had stated. The positioning was an exact match. The vehicle's angle, its distance from the sidewalk, its alignment with the road, every single detail corroborated his statement. And after it parked, the SUV never moved again. Not an inch forward or back. No lights flickering on. No doors swinging open. The vehicle remained perfectly still throughout the entire night. The recording confirms with absolute certainty that Danny never leaves the vehicle until 6:18 the next morning. That is the moment the door finally opens and he steps into view. The timestamp is undeniable. Every second of the tape backs him up. Danny's story was the truth. His alibi was ironclad. He was not the person who took Kimberly's life. The terrifying question remained: who was? Footage from a nearby bank's security cameras, the ones with a view of where Danny's SUV was parked, offered investigators a startling new perspective. Mirrored in the reflective surface of the building's windows, the bus stop from across the street was faintly visible. The image was far from perfect, distorted by glare and steeped in shadow, but it was just sharp enough to detect motion. At around 2:05 in the morning, only moments after Danny had parked, a shadowy form materialized in the reflection. A silhouette, a pale shape moving against the night's black canvas. It was a person, standing right at the bus stop, precisely where she was last seen alive. Then, from across the street, a red Toyota 4Runner cruises past her. It doesn't stop immediately. The vehicle proceeds slowly down the road, executes a turn, and then retraces its path. The entire sequence feels calculated, anything but random. As detectives rewind and scrutinize the video, a chilling detail emerges. This wasn't the SUV's first pass. It had already been there, following the same slow, deliberate pattern. The vehicle drives back and forth repeatedly, circling the stop, slowing its speed, vanishing from the frame only to reappear again. This was not the pattern of a casual driver. This was the pattern of a predator, watching, waiting, and choosing the perfect moment to strike. Then, the scene unfolds that makes everyone's blood run cold. In the window's reflection, the red SUV finally pulls to a stop beside the bus shelter. A figure is visible in the driver's seat. Another figure is standing by the window, seemingly in conversation. It lasts only a few seconds, a brief exchange. And then, the silhouette opens the passenger side door and climbs inside. The SUV executes a turn, driving slowly past Danny's parked vehicle. But now, visible in the front passenger seat, is a second shape, a human form, leaving investigators with a horrifying certainty. The timing, the location, everything was a perfect match. That silhouette had to be Kimberly. But the crucial piece of evidence was lost to the night. The video was too grainy to decipher the license plate. Glare from the headlights obscured the details. The numbers they needed to identify the vehicle were gone. Without a plate number, a quick identification of the owner was impossible. The investigation had to change course. They began the grueling process of interviewing Kimberly's friends and family, desperate for a lead. Perhaps someone she knew owned that red Toyota. Maybe she had been seen with this mystery driver before. The interrogations were long and repetitive, asking the same questions relentlessly. But every answer was a dead end. Nobody recognized the vehicle. No one could provide them with a name. The detective's next stop was the FM Recreation Center, the very place where her body had been discovered. The theory was straightforward. If the SUV was anywhere in the vicinity, surveillance would have captured it. This area, like the others, was blanketed in cameras. The team began combing through the footage, starting their search at 2:30 in the morning. Hour after agonizing hour, frame by painstaking frame, they hunted for the red Toyota. Then, at 3 a.m., it materialized. The SUV glided along a nearby street. Its movement was fluid, deliberate, the silhouette unmistakable. It was unquestionably the same truck, but the license plate remained a frustrating blur. The footage was a bombshell. It proved the SUV was in a critical location at a critical moment, but it wasn't ironclad. They needed something physical, something tangible. So, the team circled back to the items recovered from the crime scene. Among them, a small, flimsy piece of paper, a store receipt. It was the sort of thing most would dismiss. But sometimes the most insignificant clue can shatter a case wide open. This one was from Lowe's Home Improvement, dated March 23rd, at 6:02 in the evening. The information was printed in crisp, clear ink. There was no doubt. The store itself was a mere 100 meters from where Kimberly's body was found. Proximity that close could not be a coincidence. Investigators called the store, praying footage from 2 weeks earlier hadn't been erased. Typically, archives aren't maintained that long. This was a desperate gamble, a shot in the dark. But against all odds, the video still existed. March 23rd, 2014. At 5:37 p.m., a red Toyota 4Runner eases into the frame of the parking lot camera. The vehicle coasts into a parking space. Two men emerge. They shut the doors and proceed toward the store's entrance. The camera captured the scene with perfect clarity. Another piece had just fallen into place. And now, a chilling picture was beginning to form. The receipt indicated the transaction was made with a bank card. Detectives immediately began to trace it. The card belonged to a 53-year-old woman, which meant it had almost certainly been stolen. That sinister detail painted an even darker portrait. This was no random attack. Records then showed that approximately 3 hours later, the very same card was charged at a fast food restaurant. The time was exact. The location confirmed. This gave the investigation a new, promising path forward. The restaurant's security system caught the red Toyota 4Runner as it pulled onto the premises. The SUV moved confidently toward the drive-through window, and this time, detectives got the break they'd been praying for. A clear shot of the driver's face. Not pristine, but more than enough to begin an identification. The license plate, however, remained a useless smudge. The characters were a hazy, unreadable mess. For one heart-stopping moment, it felt like the trail had gone cold again. But then an employee pointed out that there was another camera, one facing the rear of the drive-thru, offering a different angle and better quality. Detectives pulled up the new feed, and that's when they found it. The license plate was visible, sharp, and undeniable. They ran the plate. The search returned a direct hit on a man living in Oakland. His name was Prince Chetch, though he went by Frank. An immigrant from Ghana, he had settled in Oakland back in 2007. At the time of the murder, he was 41 years old. He sold clothing at local farmers markets, was married, and had 3 children. By all appearances, his life was completely ordinary. Family, work, and routine. Investigators also identified the passenger from the previous footage, but official records showed that at the moment Kimberly was killed, he was already in jail. He was cleared instantly. The circle was shrinking. Every single road was now leading to one name. All attention zeroed in on Frank. The investigators now had a singular objective to prove he was the one responsible for the assault and murder of Kimberly. Mere suspicion was worthless. It wasn't nearly enough. They needed hard evidence, unshakable proof that would stand up in a court of law. Using covert cameras, detectives began canvassing his neighborhood. They posted flyers, knocked on doors, and questioned neighbors about anything unusual they might have witnessed. On the surface, it all appeared routine. Standard follow-up, brief conversations, calm voices, and careful observation. Every reaction was being scrutinized. Finally, they knocked on the door of apartment number 8, Frank's apartment. The door swung open. The officers stated their names and explained they were looking into the recent homicide of a young woman. Their delivery was steady and professional. One of them held out a flyer with Kimberly's photo and asked if he recognized her, but this was no idle question. The police already knew she had been inside his truck. This was not a question. It was a trap. Frank glanced at the photo and issued a flat denial. He didn't know her, he claimed, had never seen her anywhere near here. His answer was firm, without a trace of hesitation. They told him that if he should recall anything at all, to get in touch with the Oakland Police Department. To an onlooker, the exchange was mundane, but to the investigators, it was a pivotal breakthrough. One officer confirmed his name. He verified his own identity. It was him, the man from the video, the face behind the wheel of the red SUV. His absolute denial, claiming not to know a woman they could definitively place inside his car, was a devastating, calculated lie. That blatant contradiction was all they needed for an arrest. 5 days after Kimberly's body was found, he was in custody, facing a barrage of questions. For 5 days, detectives had quietly constructed their timeline. Now, they needed him to fill in the blanks. Why was his car cruising back and forth down that very street on the night she died? Why did it keep reappearing in the same location? Under interrogation, he claimed his marriage was crumbling. He confessed things at home had been strained for some time. The tension in their apartment was suffocating. Because of it, he alleged he would often flee, getting behind the wheel of his car to just drive. No direction, no purpose, just the open road. This, he insisted, was his escape from the stress. "You're saying you've never laid eyes on her?" the detective pressed. Frank faltered. "I can't recall. I just can't recall. She wore a long wig. These long extensions. Her face. I just don't remember it." But his narrative was about to shatter and fast. He suddenly conceded he'd met Kimberly. He admitted to giving her a lift that very night. "I picked her up," he confessed. Frank then alleged they had a sexual liaison, an encounter he swore she instigated. He painted a picture of Kimberly offering her body for a price. That was the crux of his new story. He swore it was mutual, without a hint of force or violence. After it was over, he said he dropped her off and left, vehemently denying he had anything to do with her murder. But the radical shift in his story was a massive red flag. He went from denying any intimacy to admitting everything. That glaring inconsistency, paired with the brutal way Kimberly died, was damning. He was formally charged with murder with special circumstances. Murder in the commission of a rape. The charge was brutal, unambiguous. There was no room for doubt. Then, more proof surfaced. Forensic analysis delivered a devastating blow. His DNA was a perfect match to the semen found on Kimberly's body. This wasn't theory. This was irrefutable science, and it became the cornerstone of the prosecution's entire case. A judge ordered him held at Santa Rita jail without possibility of bail, ensuring he would remain behind bars until his trial. When the trial finally commenced, Frank told the jury a new story. In the dead of night on April 5th, He saw Kimberly at a bus stop on the corner of East 18th Street and Park Boulevard. He portrayed it as a chance encounter, a few words exchanged, a proposition, a deal. But he was adamant he did not end her life. Frank testified that Kimberly offered sex for cash. He claimed she wanted $250, telling him she was out working. By his account, he talked her down to $200. Once she was in his SUV, he claimed they drove to a quiet neighborhood where they were intimate in the back seat. He delivered these details under oath, swearing every part of it was consensual and peaceful, but his version of the night would be ripped apart by the prosecution. "I did not kill that woman," he insisted. "We only had sex." He also informed the court that just hours earlier, he'd been with his wife and kids at a concert on the Berkeley campus of the University of California. It was the picture of a perfect family evening. The music, the energy, the kind of night meant to forge a happy memory. He claimed when they returned home, his wife said she was exhausted and turned down his advances. He recounted this detail matter-of-factly, as if it were trivial. But what he said next was anything but. He confessed that he had lied to the police, initially denying any sexual contact with Kimberly. He claimed he did it out of pure fear. He didn't want his wife to discover his infidelity. That, he alleged, was the only reason he concealed the truth at the start of the investigation. The defense countered that the prosecution's case was built on sand, lacking proof beyond a reasonable doubt. There were 0 eyewitnesses to the crime itself. No one saw the fatal attack. His lawyer hammered this point home again and again. Suspicion is not evidence. The defense conceded Frank made a terrible error in judgment by picking Kimberly up. They framed it as a one-night stand. A colossal mistake. Reckless? Yes, but not murder. According to the defense, he was with her for roughly an hour before dropping her off near the FM Recreation Center at around 3 in the morning. The streets were dark, deserted, and then, he maintained, he drove straight home. No argument, no struggle. Just 2 people going their separate ways on a night that would soon become a homicide investigation. A one-night affair does not make a man a rapist, and it certainly does not make him a killer, his attorney declared. There is 0 evidence he had any motive to harm her. Frank then added another detail. He said he saw blood on Kimberly. He claimed she explained it away, saying she'd fought with another man who had shoved her from his car earlier. He alleged she promised him she was all right, dismissing it as just a nasty confrontation. It was a minor detail, but his explanation felt hollow, far too simple for a night that ended in such utter brutality. Under the fire of cross-examination, Frank cracked, conceding his wife's volcanic fury over the affair. She told him it was over, that she never wanted to see his face again. His home life had imploded, and in that courtroom, it became terrifyingly clear how that rejection had left him seething, shattered, and dangerously unstable. The prosecution laid its cards on the table. The entire case was a web of circumstance. No one saw the fatal blow. Not one person witnessed the murder itself. But the prosecutor drove home a devastating point. None of the evidence existed in a vacuum. It linked together, thread by thread. It wove a single, horrifying tapestry. And that tapestry, the state argued, led to one, and only one, inescapable conclusion. He had raped and murdered Kimberly. This, they proclaimed, was the proof. His wife had ended their marriage over his cheating. Testimony painted a portrait of a man consumed by a toxic brew of rage and depression. His crumbling emotional state became the motive at the heart of their narrative. His red Toyota 4Runner SUV appeared on security footage, a predator circling the very area where Kimberly vanished. It made multiple passes, haunting the same zone in the same lethal time frame. He was the last person confirmed to have seen her breathing. After he left her, she disappeared from the world of the living. The damning receipt discovered near her body connected directly to surveillance tapes showing him purchasing every item on the list. The date, the time, the transaction, each detail a nail in his coffin, tying him to evidence left at her side. The place he claimed he had dropped her off was the precise location her body was later found. That chilling overlap was impossible to rationalize away. The spot he named became the kill zone. And then came the scientific certainty. His DNA on her body. The central undeniable fact the jury could not ignore. The jury was out for less than 2 hours. Their decision was swift and absolute. When they filed back into the courtroom, they unleashed their verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder, with the special circumstance that it was committed during the act of rape. The sentence was life in prison with no possibility of parole. He would die behind bars. His desperate attempt to smear Kimberly as a sex worker who had agreed to a one-night stand had utterly failed to sway the jury. That flimsy defense could not begin to chip away at the mountain of evidence against him. It explained nothing. It resolved no contradictions. It shook no one's conviction. Despite his persistent denials, the judge locked eyes with him. The jury concluded that you were simply lying and that you gave false testimony. They determined that you raped and killed her. The judge admitted he had hoped that when Frank was finally given the chance to speak, he might offer even a shred of human remorse. Anything at all. A single, repentant word. A look. A brief acknowledgement of guilt. Just the faintest sign that he understood the agony he had inflicted. But addressing him directly, the judge's voice turned to ice. I doubt you have that kind of heart. I don't believe you're capable of it. The courtroom fell deathly silent. Those words weren't emotional. They were a final, measured judgment. A conclusion reached after weighing every last piece of the man's soul. There was no anger on the judge's face, only the cold, clear sight of the monster standing before him. Then Kimberly's sister faced him. Her voice trembled, but her words were like steel. There was no softening her pain, no masking her grief. She was staring at the man she knew was responsible for an obliteration of her world. And what she was about to say was not merely a statement, it was a reckoning, an attempt to voice a truth that no verdict could contain. You had a choice. You didn't have to kill her. I will never get my sister back. My life will never, ever be the same. It is a place the mind refuses to go, Kimberly Robertson's final, terrifying moments. What thoughts raced through her mind as the end came? What horror did she feel? At what second did she realize she was utterly helpless? Those moments are lost to time, known only to her, but their chilling shadow will forever haunt this story. The impact of her death was a seismic shock. For her loved ones, it left a wound for which there is no balm. For her friends, a sudden, soul-crushing emptiness. For her family, a sense of raw injustice that will never fade. And the fact that her child is now forced to grow up motherless, just as Kimberly once did, is the result of another's violent, selfish rage. That brutal symmetry is almost too much to comprehend. It is a vicious circle of history, a painful loop that closed in the most tragic way imaginable. Kimberly Robertson had been a beacon of life, vibrant, open, and full of joy. She drew people in with her authentic warmth, her sincerity, her light. There was no hint of the darkness that was waiting. There was no warning of what was to come. Her entire future stretched before her, an unwritten book, a life that was meant to be filled with plans, dreams, and endless possibilities. Days she was stolen from, years that will never be. And it is that stark contrast between the woman she was and the brutal way her story was ended that makes this case so profoundly disturbing.